While the diary room scenario portrays a Pakistani Muslim family, the issues that were dealt with are perhaps equally applicable to people of all cultural and religious backgrounds. In particular, the question of gender roles within the family and the issues surrounding women's education are almost universal themes. I will now be speaking to 5 different people about their thoughts on the issues raised in the diary room. We also invite viewers to submit their thoughts via email at the address given at the end of the show.
In the diary room, Maryam and her mother-in-law seem to disagree on the importance of education. To what extent do you think it is necessary for a wife and mother to be educated for a family to be successful?
Well, it depends what the definition of success is. Different people have different definitions of success. In my opinion, the definition of success in a family is a happy family, which education doesn't necessarily create. What education does do, though, is it creates a well-rounded person, someone who knows about the world around them. So if that's what their mother has, it undoubtedly gets passed on to the children, making them more successful people.
औरत का तालीम याफ्ता होना बहुत ज़रूरी है कि अपने बच्चों को तालीम दे सके और तालीम को समझ भी सके। लेकिन मरियम के केस में मेरे ख्याल में उसके पास काफ़ी तालीम है, जो तालीम जितनी चाहिए उसके पास है। लेकिन सवाल ये उठता है कि उसको एक करियर बनाना है या फैमिली के लिए तालीम है। फैमिली के लिए तालीम तो उसके पास काफ़ी है।
It's of paramount importance for a woman to be educated, because education is such a broad thing. It goes beyond institutions. It's something that broadens people's minds, and the most important thing that a woman can give her children is the freedom of thought and the power to have independent critical thinking, and that's something which is so important.
Okay, I think there's different types of education, and in this situation I think the education about family life, about how to deal with needs, conflicts, different roles, expectations is very important. However, the husband has made a promise that his wife's aspirations will be met, and I think that's also important.
Education ज़रूरी है, मगर लाज़मी नहीं कि कॉलेज और यूनिवर्सिटी में जाके हासिल की जाए। एक माँ अपने बच्चों को अपने एक्सपीरियंसेस सिखा सकती है, जो एक एजुकेटेड माँ हो सकता है वो अपने बच्चों को वो ना सिखा पाए।
In the diary room, Anwar complains of sickness and Omar says that Maryam has done little to help look after her. How much responsibility does a woman have for looking after her mother-in-law?
Well, if the mother-in-law is ill and is incapable of looking after herself, then the daughter-in-law does have responsibility to look after the mother-in-law. But if there are other children, if the mother-in-law does have other children, then they of course have responsibility to look after their mother and make sure that her well-being is fine. But if there are no other children, then the responsibility of the daughter-in-law is much greater.
एक औरत जितनी अपनी माँ की लुक आफ्टर करेगी, इतना ही उसका हक बनता है कि वो अपनी सास की भी लुक आफ्टर करे, और ख़ुसूसन जब वो इकट्ठे रह रहे हैं और सास भी उसकी हर काम में मदद करती रही है, तो उसका फ़र्ज़ बनता है कि जब सास को ज़रूरत पड़े तो वो भी उसकी लुक आफ्टर करे।
A woman is responsible for looking after her husband and her direct family primarily. She marries her husband and not his family. So I wouldn't agree that her primary role is to look after her mother-in-law.
Okay, I'll broaden this out, and I think each and every member of the family needs to be responsible and take responsibility for others in the family. But I think more so for the mother-in-law, because she's vulnerable, and she appears to be vulnerable, and she's actually expressing that vulnerability.
ताली दोनों हाथों से बजती है। अगर एक सास अपनी बहू के साथ अच्छी हो, तो फिर बहू को भी चाहिए कि वो उसे अपनी माँ जैसा समझे।
In the diary room, Omar says he refuses to take out a loan for Maryam's education. To what extent is it okay to spend money that you don't have on an education that might not bring income?
Well, in my personal opinion, I think education is priceless. So even if you do spend money on it, money comes and goes, but education will be with you for the rest of your life. And also, an educated society is a less dull society, so I don't believe that spending money on education and not fully knowing that you're not going to get the money back is a bad thing.
किसी भी हालात में कर्ज लेना अच्छी बात नहीं है और अगर ये भी ख़तरा है कि शायद वो हम वापस ना कर पाए तो और भी सोच समझ के लेना चाहिए। इस सिचुएशन में अगर शौहर आमिर खुश नहीं है तो मरियम को ज़िद नहीं करनी चाहिए कि वो कर्ज़ा ले, बल्कि कोशिश करनी चाहिए कि दोनों मिलजुल के कमाएं और इतने पैसा कमा सकें कि वो अपनी तालीम का खुद खर्चा उठा सकें।
Okay, I think it's a problem getting into debt at any time. However, I think Miriam's vulnerable after having the baby, and she may realise now that there's many years ahead of her of demands looking after the baby. It's important, therefore, not to quash her dreams and her aspirations about higher education. A compromise might be to study with the Open University, and that might be one option which leads to a resolution of some of the needs and conflicts that might be going on between the family members.
Education is such an important thing, and I think it's something that should be aspired to by all peoples, regardless of their financial situation. And it links into the point of building a family that can operate properly in civic society and have independent critical thinking, which goes beyond their material situation. So the answer would be that it's definitely something that should be done regardless of the financial situation.
ज़रूरत से ज़्यादा पैसा नहीं तो फजूल खर्च करके डिग्री लेने का कुछ फ़ायदा नहीं जो आगे काम ना आए।
In the diary room, Omar stresses that he is capable of looking after the family and that his wife Miriam should be at home looking after their daughter. To what extent do you think that a man's role is to provide income for the family and a woman's role is to look after the household?
While I do believe that it's important for a woman to be at home to look after her children during the early years of their life, I think that it's important for her to have financial power too, because in the case of an emergency, if something happens to the husband or if the husband leaves them, then it has to be her that steps up and take the financial responsibility for not only her but for her children too.
आजकल के ज़माने में ज़रूरी नहीं है कि औरत ही बच्चों को देखे और आदमी कमा के लाए। कभी ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि औरत कमा सकती है और आदमी के पास काम नहीं है, तो उस वक़्त रोल रिवर्स भी हो सकते हैं। औरत कमा सकती है और आदमी घर में बच्चों की लुक आफ्टर कर सकता है। तो ऐसा कोई ज़रूरी रोल नहीं है कि एक बंदे को यही काम करना है।
Maybe at one point before the Industrial Revolution or industrialization in some parts of the world, that may have been true, but nowadays in the world that we live in, it's becoming increasingly important, if not necessary, for both the man and the woman to provide for the family. And I think that that's a reality rather than a point of view.
मेरे ख्याल में अगर एक हस्बैंड को ज़रूरत है अपनी वाइफ की कि वो बाहर से कमा के लाए, और अगर एक वाइफ कर सकती है तो she should. And in other hand, husband को भी चाहिए कि वो घर में अपनी वाइफ के कामों में उसकी मदद करे.
Well, I think these are interchangeable, but I think it's useful to negotiate this before marriage, and obviously negotiate very honestly if a point comes when those roles have to be changed. I had experience of this a few years ago when I looked after 4 children for 12 weeks. I wouldn't particularly want to do it again. So that doesn't suit me.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Diary Room. We have shown that even when talking about the same subject matter, each person has a different viewpoint and perspective. No person's view was entirely right nor entirely wrong. It is clear that to deal with such matters correctly, we must take into consideration the specific circumstances of each situation, then discuss with each other as a community to discover the best way forward for each person concerned. If you would like to submit your thoughts and opinions to us on this episode of The Diary Room and the issues discussed within it, then please write to us via email at the address given on screen. Thank you, and peace be upon you.